Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I used to think the market was the cleanest thing in America. Not fair, not kind, just clean. A number either goes up or down. Earnings beat or miss. Guidance raises or lowers. You can wrap 1,000 narratives around a candlestick and still the candlestick sits there like a little truth. My name is Daniel Reid. I'm 40, an analyst who has spent half his adult life trying to explain to very confident people why their very confident ideas were off by 27 basis points. I worked for a mid-sized fund with big-sized delusions, Baird Capital Partners, which sounds like a Civil War regiment and acted like one. We ran long/short with a quality growth at a reasonable tantrum strategy, which meant we believed in narratives as long as they cleared our hurdle rate. I could take a 10K apart with a butter knife. I could sniff out a Channel stuffed quarter from across the Hudson. I was good at my job. Not yacht good. Comfortable shoes good. When people ask what I loved most before everything went sideways, I say this: making models that worked and believing my wife was proud of me. Claire has movie star posture and a voice that gets you to buy the house 2 stops past your budget. When we met, she worked in PR for a luxury brand that sold watches so complicated they needed a personality test. She loved my curiosity, or said she did, the way I could spend an evening arguing with myself about whether deferred revenue is the lie that keeps capitalism polite. We got married at a vineyard where the servers said "sir" like they were paid per syllable. She told me, often, "I'm proud of you." I kept that sentence in my pocket like a lucky coin. Time is a momentum trade. You ride until you don't. After a few years, Claire started changing the way she talked about success. It wasn't sudden, just a drift in the tide. We'd go to some charity thing, a room filled with men who all bought the same haircut, and Claire would lean in and say, "Look at that, Daniel. Real men buy slips, not subway cards." I'd laugh it off. I prefer assets that don't depreciate in hurricanes. She'd smile, tight. Another time, we went to a friend's party on a boat. The host had named it Alpha, which tells you everything. Claire stood at the stern with a glass of something that cost more than our car's tires and said, "There's something about a person who can steer." "I steer," I said. "Just with spreadsheets." She kissed me, distracted. "One day we'll get you a boat. Or at least a vest with the boat's name on it." The comments piled up like receipts. Real men with yachts don't check their Robin Hood in the bathroom. Real men with yachts don't take the path. Real men with yachts don't get excited about free seltzer in the office. None of this was funny, but I kept trying to find the joke. I still believed she was on my team. I brought home ridiculous cheeses when we hit our hurdle. I booked a weekend upstate when the fund crushed a quarter. She smiled and said the right words, but there was a static to them, like the channel wasn't ours anymore. The day I found out was workaday. We'd had a morning meeting where our CIO, Hale Beringer, did his Houdini act with a position that had gone sideways. We're adding to conviction. Hale is the kind of man who makes you feel poor even when he owes you money. He's handsome in a glossy way, the sort of handsome that's mostly lighting. He's also our lead investor's favorite drinking buddy, the lead investor, the man who made our fund possible, a sign whose family name appears etched into hospital wings and hedge fund redemptions alike. Everyone called him the Admiral because of the boat, or because men love a nickname that feels like a trophy. I left early under the pretense of a dentist appointment because my molar was fine and my marriage wasn't. Something in me had been tugging at the thread of Claire's calendar, too many client dinners, too many late PR crises that somehow left her glowing. I told myself to stop dramatizing. You're an analyst, not a poet. Gather data. The hotel was not one I had ever stayed in. The lobby smelled like money ironing its shirt. I didn't know why I walked in there. I had her location because couples have their ways. I told myself I was just going to prove that I was paranoid and then eat something sad at a counter like a grown man. I stood near the elevators, not quite hiding because hiding requires confidence, and watched the doors slide open on my life. Claire stepped out laughing. She wore a dress I'd bought her 2 birthdays ago, the kind that turns heads and stuns bank accounts. Next to her, the Admiral. He put a hand on the small of her back like he was adjusting a stock. They looked like a brochure for a tax shelter. For a beat, I convinced myself they were there for a gala rehearsal, a planning committee, A charity where wealthy men adopt adjectives. Then he kissed her temple and she leaned in and the elevator doors tried to close on my disbelief. I don't remember crossing the lobby. I do remember the way the clerk looked up, worried, in the way people worry about angry men in nice clothes. I remember the carpet being too soft, like a rich person's conscience. I reached them by the revolving door because the universe loves metaphors. "Hey," I said, voice calm as a road sign. Claire turned. The look on her face wasn't guilt. It was annoyance. "Daniel," she said. "You scared me." The Admiral smiled like he'd been waiting to practice it. "Daniel," he boomed, "because men like him boom. What a coincidence." "I'm not a coincidence," I said. "I'm a husband." The smile shrank a millimeter. Claire stepped in like a PR rep at a product recall. "Don't make a scene." "I'm not making anything," I said, "because the denial is part of the ritual." "What is this?" "It's business," she said, as if I were 12. "We're discussing a campaign. The hospital gala. Bayard's sponsorship." "With a sweet key?" I asked, looking at the Admiral's hand. He looked down, theatrically surprised, and slipped it into his pocket. "Don't be vulgar," he said. He said it like vulgar was my native tongue. Claire leaned in. "Listen to me," she said, voice low. "If you say a word, you will lose everything. Do you understand? Your job? Gone. Your standing? Gone. No one will choose you over him. No one will choose you over me. Be smart, Daniel. Be quiet. There are threats that feel like weather, you just get wet." This felt like a hand on my throat. I stepped back because the floor was moving under me and I wanted the elevator to open and swallow me whole. I said something like okay because my mouth needed to say a word. I left. The air outside was unsweet. I walked until I could pretend the city was big enough to hold me, then I went home and sat in our kitchen and stared at the fruit bowl like it had answers. When Claire came back that night, she changed into pajamas as if nothing had happened and asked if I had fed the plants. I fed myself instead. Bourbon has a way of making numbers fuzzier, which for a man like me is both relief and punishment. I started a slow slide down a staircase I would not have admitted existed. At work, I stopped fighting for price targets. I started saying, "Looks fine," which is not analysis, it's surrender. My boss noticed. "Everything okay?" he asked with a concerned sociopath smile. "You seem May." "I'm good," I lied. The Admiral came by more. He slapped backs. He made jokes about real men in real boats. He and Claire became a fixture in places people like to be seen. Photos appeared, a launch, a charity, a brunch that made me hate eggs. "You should be proud of her," people said. "She's so radiant." I quit 2 months later, officially for a period of rest and re-evaluation, unofficially because I couldn't bear to have my value measured by men who thought ethanol was a personality. Unemployment is a mirror. I learned that I will do exactly nothing if I am allowed. I also learned that I am very, very good at building morgues for my days, places where I put hours to die. My doctor said I was self-medicating. I told him I preferred hobbyist. Then he told me my liver disagreed, and I put the bottle on a high shelf where it could stare at me without winning. The sentence that saved me came from a place I can't name. Maybe my grandmother, who believed in proverbs and clip coupons. Maybe a part of me I had walked past for a decade. "You're an analyst," it said. "Start analyzing." I shaved. I made coffee like a ritual, not a drug deal. I opened a laptop that didn't want to know me anymore, and I did what I always do, I built a file. Name, Claire. That's petty, I know. Call it what it is. Inside that, folders, Admiral, Bayard anomalies, filings, whispers that smelled like smoke. And then, because I know who I am, another folder titled "Don't Guess." You cannot subpoena your way through heartbreak. You can, however, read. I started with public filings. 13FS, 13DS, the letters we'd sent to investors, the footnotes people ignore until the SEC decides they matter. I reread our fund docs, the offering memorandum that had made me sleepy the first time. Side letters to select investors? We all knew they existed. Preferential liquidity? Sure, if your check had a lot of commas. Side pockets? We didn't have them, officially. But we did have carve-outs for illiquid opportunities. The kind of language that lets clever men pretend the rules are wearing heels. Then I noticed it, a discrepancy so small it looked like dandruff. Our monthly letters had a line for unrealized appreciation that grew in a way curves don't grow unless you help them. We were claiming marks in a private position that outpaced the last round's terms without a new round. You can believe in a unicorn, you cannot tell me it learned to fly by staying in the barn. I called a friend in prime brokerage who owes me 3 favors and prefers to pay me back with gossip instead of money. Hypothetically, I said, if a fund wanted to encourage a mark on a level 3 asset, how would they? He cut me off. Don't say hypothetically. You hate that word. Then he told me a story involving a friendly family office and a term sheet that read more like a press release than a contract. I dug. The Admiral's family office had taken a strategic minority position in a company that looked very much like the one we were marking up. The family office then led a tiny internal round at a higher valuation, which allowed us to mark our stake higher, which allowed us to report lower volatility, which allowed the Admiral to present to his friends that he was invested in a fund with exceptional risk-adjusted returns, which allowed those friends to invest, which allowed Hale to buy another apartment his wife would never fully furnish. It's a party trick. You move the ball onto the cup you're watching and tell everyone you've invented gravity. There was more. I found an email, sent to me, which is the only reason I had a copy, that I had ignored because it was boring the way crimes get boring if you document them in Times New Roman. It was from our CFO, an honest man who dressed like a tax return, asking to confirm the agreed-upon smoothing approach for booking our quarter-end marks in 2 names. Smoothing is a word that should only belong to peanut butter and apologies. In finance, it means we didn't like the real number. I put it all in a timeline. I added the Admiral's meetings with our IR team. I added the lunches he had with reporters who wrote thoughtful profiles that should have been labeled sponsored content by hubris. I added Claire's events, the ones with step and repeat backdrops that look like wallpaper from a bank robber's waiting room. The narrative was ugly. It was also simple. The Admiral had tilted the field so his money looked smarter than it was. The fund had helped. It is illegal to manipulate valuations. It is also illegal to exploit preferential terms in ways that harm other investors. The SEC does not like lies dressed as comp math. I did the thing Claire said I couldn't do, I spoke. I reached out to the SEC whistleblower office. You can do it anonymously, I did not. I like my name. I submitted a packet so organized it should have won a MacArthur for spite. Spreadsheets, emails, exhibits, memos, footnotes circled like someone's doctor appointment. I wrote a cover letter that contained no adjectives except material. Then I made a second packet for a reporter I trust, a woman who calls me when her editors want her to make it simple and she wants to make it right. I told her to hold until the SEC sniffed. She said okay in a way that tells you a person likes their job. Claire still thought I was broken. She said, "How are you feeling?" With a knife in it. She wore dresses that made me believe in God and shoes that made me believe in budgets. She went to the yacht club with the Admiral and learned the names of other rich men's dogs. She told me, one night when she felt generous, that I should apply for something smaller, something less intense, which is a kind of kindness that kills you slowly. I felt many things. Petty, righteous, embarrassed, certain. Also free, which surprised me. When you stop trying to be chosen by people who will never choose you, you get a lot of hours back. The SEC called me in. Not to a room with wood paneling, those are for TV. A nondescript office with coffee that has been reheated 1,000 times and men and women who look like they enjoy paperwork as a contact sport. They asked for everything. I gave them everything. They did not tell me I was a hero. They told me I was useful. That's better. The reporter worked her channels. She called 3 other sources who all said off the record and then told the same story with different verbs. She asked for comment from Bayard. Bayard issued a statement denying nothing and defending everything. The Admiral went on a podcast and said the haters didn't understand family capital. The host laughed like a man with a sponsor. The story broke on a Tuesday because Tuesdays are for pain. Exclusive, fund backed by Admiral's name. Inflated returns through related party deals, Sources say. The phone's lit. Investors called and learned the most important phrase in finance: gate provisions. You can't always get your money back when you want it if the documents are written to make sure you can't. Some could. Some couldn't. Meanwhile, the SEC put out a notice of investigation. That's not the same as an indictment. It is, however, the train leaving the station. Bayard tried to box. They called it a misunderstanding of sophisticated valuation practices. They threw the CFO under the bus, then discovered the bus had documentation on it. The Admiral hired a lawyer whose eyebrows argue even when his mouth doesn't. Claire called me and said, softly, "Did you do this?" I said, "I told the truth to people whose job is to collect it." She said, "You've destroyed everything." I said, "We had different definitions of everything." The fund collapsed like a flan. Hedge funds don't usually die, they fade into family offices. Bayard did both at once. Investors redeemed what they could. The Admiral discovered that prosecutors prefer evidence to aura. He was arrested 6 months later on charges involving securities fraud, wire fraud, and something with conspiracy in it, which is the legal term for you needed more friends. They perp-walked him past a car that wasn't his. He wore a fleece vest because he is incapable of reading a room. Claire lost something more ephemeral and, for her, more important, status. The invitations dried up. The brunches moved tables. The women who had called her inspirational stopped replying to her texts because scandal is contagious if you stand too close to it. The PR world she loved closed ranks around someone younger. She told friends, loudly, that she had been blindsided. Maybe she had, by the speed. Not by the substance. We divorced with fewer theatrics than the situation deserved. There are only so many scenes you can make before the props fall apart. She took the furniture she cared about, which turned out to be anything you can see reflected in a mirror. I took the coffee machine and my grandmother's Dutch oven and a couch that had molded to our arguments. She told me I would regret losing a woman like her. I told her I regretted losing the woman she used to be. That's not the same regret. What happened next is boring in the way growth often is. I stopped drinking like I was trying to erase my mouth. I ran the loop at the park until my lungs forgave me. I bought shirts that buttoned. I slept. My old boss called with something that sounded like an apology and something that sounded like an offer to come back and help them steward the wreckage. I said no. A thing in me had burned, and where it had burned, something useful had grown. I hung a piece of paper on the wall that said Lion Analytics because once you name a thing, you can talk to it. I started a small consultancy doing the only thing I know how to do: read, think, explain. I helped a family office understand why their son-in-law's fund looked like a casino with better lighting. I helped a pension ask better questions of their managers so they wouldn't be surprised by gates and side letters written in invisible ink. I wrote a newsletter that didn't try to be funny and won't go viral and somehow got me on the short list of people reporters call when they need someone to say, "This is stupid," with citations. Clients found me. Not the yacht men. The quietly rich, the responsibly hopeful, the foundations that don't want to accidentally fund a sociopath. I priced honestly. I answered directly. I said I don't know out loud because I don't know is smarter than trust me. I hired a junior, Nina, who can read a footnote like a spy reads a postcard. We rented a small WeWork before it died again, then a sublet above a bagel shop where the heat clangs and the coffee smells like a memory. I put a lion on the door that looks nothing like a lion because logos are ridiculous and I wanted to laugh at myself daily. One afternoon, months after the arrest, I ran into Claire on Lexington. She looked like a photograph of herself. She said my name like it was both a question and a complaint. "You look good," she lied. "You look vertical," I said, because I can't help myself. She glanced at the bagel shop sign above my head. "This is your office?" she asked, as if location could be an insult. "It is," I said. "The schmear is excellent." She shifted her weight. "You could have kept quiet." "I tried that," I said. "It wasn't as productive." "Your new friends," she said, chin up. "Do they have boats?" "Some have canoes," I said. "They like rivers." "You're impossible," she said, and walked away wearing a coat that cost a car. I stood there and watched the city be itself. A delivery guy balanced 4 iced coffees like an act of faith. A woman argued with a parking meter. A child dropped a bagel and discovered gravity. Ordinary life is not a yacht. It's better. My favorite client is a small college endowment that sends me spreadsheets with fonts that make me nostalgic. They listen when I say, ask for the side letters before you fall in love. They ask questions about liquidity mismatches, and nobody in the room pretends to be cool when they don't understand. We get coffee afterward. They send me home with a sweatshirt that says Go Lions, which is not about me but still makes me grin. I still wake up some mornings and feel that old ache, the one where you want to be the man in the brochure. Then I make eggs in the Dutch oven because I don't care how you're supposed to use it. I read filings, the way some men read box scores. I send Nina an edit with good catch in it because praise is better than espresso. I run a loop in the park and do not think about yachts. On my desk is a simple frame with a note my mother sent, knowing me better than I wish she did, you did the right thing, which is often the painful thing. Next to it, a quote I wrote down while pretending not to, numbers are just stories with less punctuation. When I get cocky, I look at that and remember the elevator doors. Sometimes reporters ask me to talk about bringing down a fund. I tell them I didn't. The fund brought itself down. I sent the invitation. The government RSVP'd. My part was small, specific, necessary. Like tightening a bolt on a bridge you'll never drive over. On Fridays, I take long walks without my phone and let my brain be unsupervised. I watch men invest talk loudly into headsets about deals that will not happen and women carry tote bags that could fit a medium-sized ambition. I stop on a bench and write in a notebook like a Luddite, notes, ideas, jokes I will not tweet because I want to stay employed. I look at the people around me and remember that the economy is a relay race with groceries. Do I regret anything? Of course. I regret believing that love is a moat. I regret letting someone else narrate my worth in boat lengths. I regret the months I drank through because I was afraid to hear my own thoughts. I do not regret telling the truth to people paid to meet it with a pencil. I do not regret the sign on my door, the lion that looks like a house cat, the bagels above me, the clients who want to be bored on purpose because bored on purpose means no surprises in a quarter that counts. Claire married a man with a boat once, in her mind. I married a number that would tell me who I was. Both of us had to grow up. One night, I found myself on a pier with a friend whose fund is honest and small and good, the kind of thing that doesn't get press because it refuses to pretend. We watched the water with our hands in our pockets like cliches. A yacht went by, lit like a casino. He said, "You want one?" I said, "I can't swim." He laughed, said, "Fair," and the boat passed, and the wake rocked us for a second, and then the city settled again. Back at the office, Nina asked if we could put a motto on the website. Lion Analytics, what? She said, pen poised. We read the footnotes, I said. She grinned. Too sexy. We tell you where the bodies are buried, I said. Too true. We settled on clarity over charisma. It fits. I'm done with charisma. It leaks. Clients call. I answer. The SEC still sends me emails that start with Dear Mr. Reid, as if we're old friends in a novel. Reporters occasionally quote me saying unglamorous things like, check the liquidity buckets. My mother sends soup. My father pretends not to care and forwards me op-eds with the subject line interesting. When I think about Claire now, I try to remember the woman who taught me how to tie a bow tie because I kept looking like a binary option. I try to forget the woman in the lobby who thought fear would keep me quiet. Both are true. I don't need to pick one to be okay. I am not a hero. I am a man with a spreadsheet addiction and a willingness to be disliked by people who own boats. I am a little freer than I was, a little poorer on paper, a lot richer in ways you can't put in a deck. The market is still not fair. It is still clean. Sometimes, if you look hard and long enough, a candlestick is not just a candlestick. It's a story about who got to set the light. Lion Analytics is a deliberate joke. I am not a lion. I am a cat with a pencil. But when a client looks at me and says, we thought we had to accept the story the manager told us, and I get to say, no, you get to write your own, I feel something like pride that isn't dependent on a slip or a vest. It's dependent on a number that makes sense. There's a postcard on my fridge from a student I mentored once in a high school investing club. He got into a state school that will save him from debt. He wrote, "Thanks for teaching me to ask where the incentive is." I taped it next to the magnet in the shape of a yacht someone said as a joke. Sometimes in the morning I make coffee, look at both, and laugh out loud like a man in a movie who finally gets it. You want a moral? I don't traffic in morals. I traffic in cautionary tales with better formatting. But here's what I learned the hard way: if someone tells you to be quiet because power prefers silence, count to 10, then count the cash flows, then say your piece. If someone tells you your worth is measured in surface area, measure deeper. If someone tells you a number that makes you feel like the world is a brochure, read the footnotes. Always read the footnotes. The day we signed our first retainer with a client who, 6 months earlier, would have ignored my email, I bought a bagel with too much cream cheese and sat on a park bench and let the sun have me. My phone buzzed with a text from Nina, "We did it, boss." I texted back a lion emoji I would have mocked a year before. It felt ridiculous and exactly right. On my walk home, I passed a store with a display of boats and bottles. I stood there and looked at them, little ships trapped in perfect glass seas. They're impressive. Also, a little sad. I don't want to live in a bottle. I want to live where the water can get messy and the numbers are honest and the stories we tell about ourselves have room for the parts where we fail and fix and build again. Claire will tell her version. The Admiral will write one from prison that blames regulators and haters and weather. Hale will join a think tank with a coffee budget bigger than my rent and say words like macro into microphones. Me? I'll be in an office over a bagel shop, reading a footnote, telling a client, "This looks fine, but look here," and hoping they pay me not for my charisma but for my clarity. And every now and then, when the day is quiet and the number is clean, I'll allow myself the smallest smile and say, "To no one, Lion Analytics." Then I'll get back to work. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the AEN Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.